Just wonderful. I just want to say it's an honor and a pleasure to speak to you today. I've been a fan of your music for quite a long time, and especially the new stuff as well.
That's nice to hear. Oh, cool. Thank you, Bill. That's always good to hear.
So let's remind everyone today we're talking with Jack Hues, a founding member of the legendary new wave band Wang Chung. And you guys have been captivating audiences for over 4 decades. Now, Wang Chung, along with Men Without Hats, The Motels, and Naked Eyes, will land at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts on Sunday, June 23rd, for the Abducted by the 80s tour. Now, as the band's lead singer and guitarist, you're responsible for hits like Everybody Have Fun Tonight and Dance Hall Days, and with millions of records sold worldwide, Wang Chung has left an indelible mark on the music scene. But beyond the chart toppers, you have also become a great solo artist, a composer, and an explorer of diverse musical genres. So thanks again, Jack, for taking time to talk with me today.
It's a pleasure.
Now, of course, Wang Chung's 40th anniversary. First of all, congratulations on this incredible milestone. How does it feel to celebrate 4 decades of music with Wang Chung? And did you think you'd be here right now talking about this?
I probably didn't even consider it, no. But it's kind of a nice place to be. 40 years is a chunk of time for sure. And I think now it's possible to look back at our work in the 80s and the 80s more generally, as a sort of cohesive time, and to feel very proud to have been a part of that particular bit of music history.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned before, you, along with several other bands from the 80s, will be performing at the Broward Center for the Performing Arts. What can fans expect from this special show?
I think it's a mixture of, I guess, coming to see, four iconic 80s bands, with original members. And you get a whole load of hits in the mix, which obviously take you on that nostalgic journey. But I think you also get to see that these bands have a kind of dynamic presence and a sort of relevance to the sort of current music scene in a sense. It's coming to see proper musicians playing, and so I think, a mix of hits. But we've designed the tour so there's not too many bands, so we each get a chance to play a decent length set, and that means that you get deeper cuts. And we'll be playing To Live and Die in LA and Space Junk, for example, as well as obviously Everybody Have Fun Tonight and Dance All Day.
Now, besides the songs you just mentioned that are all, really great charted hits, you mentioned deep cuts. Now, of all the songs you've written, do you have one that holds a special place in your heart, and why?
I think right now I would put To Live and Die in LA in that place, just because it's having a bit of a revival through being used as the theme music for a show called Everybody's in LA,
Yes.
which is a show that the comedian John Mulaney has been doing recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's created a bit of a buzz, and he uses To Live and Die in LA as the sort of theme tune for his show and throughout the segments. And I think with To Live and Die in LA, Dance All Days, Everybody Have Fun Tonight, everybody knows those hits, and that's great. And they're part of the staple of that time, But To Live and Die in LA, I think even at the time, it wasn't a huge hit, and people sort of discovered it for themselves over the years, and I think that gives it a sort of special value for people, and it seems to sort of chime in with a particular sort of zeitgeist, for want of a better word, at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that's to do with looking at the world with a slightly more sober kind of perspective than the kind of untamable positivity of the 80s.
Sure. Now, Wang Chung's sound has evolved over the years. How do you balance staying true to your roots while exploring new musical territories?
I guess the musical territories that I explore these days are partly in progressive rock, I suppose, and that's something that I grew up with as a kid. Bands like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Genesis. They were the bands that I listened to when I was sort of 13, 14, 15, that kind of critical time. and they influenced my guitar playing a lot. I guess it was good to be a guitar player in those days because you sort of aspired pretty high. You know, guys like John McLaughlin in the charts. You know, to kind of make you feel totally depressed about ever being able to play guitar. You know? So that was cool. But I think I also am influenced these days a lot by jazz, which is not something I was terribly interested in when I was a kid, or through the 80s particularly. You know? But through the later 90s, I started to get into Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and through meeting some jazz musicians in the UK. I live in a city called Canterbury, and which is close to London, and a mixture of London and Canterbury musicians. I found very inspiring to work with. You know, although I would never call myself a jazz player, I started writing in that idiom. You know, writing into a space where there's a lot more improvisation, and that really opened me up a lot.
Well, tell us about Jack Hues and the quartet, because you mentioned jazz, and this is like a folk jazz kind of jam ensemble. And I mean, it sounds fascinating and amazing. How did this collaboration come about, and what unique elements do you bring to it?
Well, I think a two-pronged thing. You know, one was meeting Sam Bailey, who's a piano player who lives in Canterbury, my hometown these days. He's a great facilitator. I think he's a kind of can-do person. So when I said, you know, let's sort of hang out together and stuff, he said, well, I'll bring some music, and then he brought along a bass player, a double bass player, and we formed a band. This is in the early 2000s, you know, literally just jamming in my front room. But then we started doing gigs, and I played it, some of the stuff we were doing to Chris Hues, and Chris had produced Dance All Day, the early Wang Chung stuff. But was still a really close friend, and he loved what I was doing, so we made a couple of albums together. You know, that's a very short version of it, of course. You know, but I think partly meeting Sam, you know, because he's, like I say, a very practical, can-do kind of person. And the other thing was discovering the music of particularly Miles Davis, actually, and not so much his playing as a trumpeter, although that is inspiring, but it's the way he approaches composing and the way he works with other musicians and that kind of stuff. And, you know, I'm just a huge fan of his music and his approach to being an artist.
Yeah, definitely. I think fans of Wang Chung should definitely check out the quartet, because it is a step away from what Wang Chung style is, but I mean, it is fascinating and an amazing listen. So yeah, definitely fans go and check out Jack Hues and the quartet. You're not going to hate me for it, that's for sure. Now, your solo work. I had heard that there was a lost solo album. Can you share any details about it and maybe what led to its rediscovery?
Yeah, I mean, when Wang Chung split, that's right at the end of the 80s, Nick and I both made separate solo records. I think we both needed to do that to sort of re-establish our identities in a sense, you know, which kind of maybe got a little confused during the later sort of years of the 80s, you know, where we were trying to kind of be Wang Chung, but be ourselves. It got quite complicated, you know. So we each did a solo album, and Nick's came out. It was an album he called his band Promised Land, and he did that with a guy called John Moss, who's the drummer in Culture Club. And they had a hit on the sort of dance scene at that time, you know, and it did pretty well. The album I did, in the end, never came out for various sort of political reasons. And to this day, it remains unreleased. I've never really sort of gone back to it to sort of think about it. But I think, you know, one of the projects we're involved in at the moment with Wang Chung is a greatest hits album. And we're definitely sort of looking at reissuing the back catalogue. And at that point, I think it may be interesting to re-release the lost solo album, as you say.
Oh, that would be fantastic! My goodness. Now,
yeah, but you know, I think the first solo album that I did that actually came out was an album called Primitive, which came out in 2020.
Yes. Now, as a singer, when you're on tour, what do you do, if anything, to maintain your vocals while you're on tour?
That's a very good question, because it's that's the hardest thing to to have any kind of control over, and I was very aware on the first show, it's a sort of 45-minute set we're doing, which is not too long. I mean, pretty modest compared with some of the artists who are older than I am and still doing it out there, yeah, I do a few vocal exercises, sort of warm-ups before I go on stage. Try and rest my voice during the day. We have a few days off at the moment, which is quite good. I guess, Wang Chung really between 1990 and about 2008, so the best part of 20 years, we didn't really do anything in terms of live playing. So unlike a lot of singers, I had a sort of 20-year gap, where I wasn't, smashing my voice every night, so I think that was helpful, and I'm just kind of grateful that I can still, get up into the higher reaches and, keeping control over your voice. As you get older, it is harder to do. It simply is. But I just do the best I can. I don't over stress about it. I don't overwork the practice and stuff. But I try and keep focused on it.
Now, we both kind of share another interest that I found out about recently. Beyond music, I hear you're intrigued by UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a subject, right?
Yeah, I mean, I look at all these little videos that pop up. What is this? What could it be? And I find them intriguing, want to investigate, want to find out what it is. My opinion is that, we're this little marble in this giant universe with all of us on it. Why can't there be others out there? You know what I mean? I mean, I think there's definitely something beyond. And with everything that's going on in the world, I'm waiting for that moment, which I'm hoping is any time now, that we finally get this answer that we've all been looking for. If UFOs actually really exist. And I know there's documentation out there that is sort of proving that fact. What is your take on it?
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with all that you're saying. I started getting interested in the subject in the 90s, late 90s, and that was around the time when the X-Files were on, I suppose. And although I wasn't I didn't watch it every week and stuff, there was a certain thing in the zeitgeist at that time, the late 90s, when this subject sort of started bubbling up into mass media, I suppose,
Yes.
And, I think like a lot of these sort of subjects that are bracketed under like conspiracy theories, if you just take a sort of glance at it, you kind of think, it's probably crazy. And there's a way that the mass media slants things that make it all seem a bit jokey, so you kind of take it or leave it sort of thing. But once you start getting into the detail and reading a couple of books on the subject, and maybe on particular UFO cases, then you start to sort of see, like, actually there's a hell of a lot of evidence and a lot of witness testimony and a lot of factual information about the subject that, if it were not being suppressed, you just have no problem with sort of thing. Well, of course this is a real phenomenon. And I released a single last year. I wrote this song called Since 2017.
Yes.
And this was a song kind of inspired by the New York Times article in December 2017 that really reframed the whole UFO subject, renaming it the UAP subject. So UAP is, I think, unidentified anomalous phenomena. It stands for, And the New York Times article, to really summarise it very briefly, was basically saying there's no doubt now that the subject, that these craft that are detected by military witnesses, on radar, on their sort of infrared cameras, and eyewitness as well. There's no doubt that these things are real.
Yes.
As we define that as physical presence, the question now is, what are they? And I think that was a very powerful reframing of the question. So, I guess that's, at that point, I'm sort of with you. It would be fascinating to know what they are. I know having, delved deep into it, there's a certain amount of sense that the answer probably isn't a simple one or necessarily reassuring, but it's still, I think, very much a part of the human experience, and for some people, a very vivid, human experience that they interact with these craft and sometimes the pilots of the craft, and I sort of no doubt that's happened with people who say it happened to them, and it would be fascinating to know kind of what that is, what the agenda is, and where it's all going.
Yeah, well, let's hope we get some answers soon, and I'm really excited and looking forward to it. On a final note, the legacy and future of Wang Chung. Looking ahead, what legacy do you hope Wang Chung leaves behind, and what exciting projects might be on the horizon?
Well, we're very much involved with that legacy at the moment. We want to release a greatest hit. Well, we will be releasing a greatest hits album in a few months.
Good.
Maybe really but it hasn't quite worked out like that. But we're calling the album Clear Light, Dark Matter, and it's going to be a double vinyl release and on CD, but the main release is on vinyl. It'll be, album 1 will be the hits as we all know and love them, and album 2 will be outtakes, some rarities that have never been released before, tracks that were recorded at the time but not released, some demos, and like our very first single that we released before we got signed to a major label.
Wonderful.
That should be exciting. And hopefully that's a prelude to re-releasing the back catalogue of the 6 studio albums, in deluxe editions. I would love to see that happen. And in a way, I think that's how I'd like the Wang Chung legacy to look, But what's great is that the songs continue to be used in movies. Dance All Days is an Amazon Prime movie called The Idea of You. And as I said earlier, To Live and Die in LA is in this John Mulaney series, Everybody's in LA. And, that's receiving a really great sense of revival. So I think, for whatever reason, this 40th anniversary year, there's a kind of resurgence of interest in Wang Chung.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to the release of that, and we'll keep in touch. And when it hits the streets, we'll talk about that again.
That's great, Bill. I really appreciate you researching. It's always great to talk about the subject beyond Wang Chung and about my solo stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for that.
And let's remind everyone, we're speaking with Jack Hues today, and the Abducted by the 80s tour will be coming to the Broward Center Performing Arts on Sunday, June 23rd. Tickets available at the box office or at Ticketmaster. And let me tell you, I'm excited. I'll be there, and we'll come and say hi. And have a good one, Jack. Talk to you soon.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so much, Bill.
All right, buddy.
Thanks for the show.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, my friend.